this point. Now that's how it works. Now, as we were saying before, this big boy wasn't letting Daddy and Mommy get much sleep last night. So he's gonna be here with Daddy so Mommy can get some sleep. Yeah. So I'm Matt, and this is Johannes, and you can have your morning coffee, tea, or any other beverage of choice, if you want to have a beverage at all, with us. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, that's the curtain over there. That's the stream window over there. This is Daddy's coffee cup, which we're waiting to fill until the coffee cools down enough. That is Daddy's keyboard that Daddy unplugged for the purpose of letting you have a little something to look at without having to worry. Careful. We type gently. We type one key at a time, because otherwise it's just going to look like there's going to be the P, the O, the the A, the L, the O, the 9. All of those will be typed at the same time if you slam on the keyboard. We type A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Then we also have O, A, and there. Yeah. But is it more interesting for you to go and look at the streamy thingy? Is that more interesting for you? Anyhow, the topic of today's stream is going to basically be what I would do in order, or my proposal for providing the opportunity for everyone to get a proper education. And by proper education, I do not mean that which passes for education and is given by public schools nowadays. By proper education, I mean, ultimately, one that includes and goes beyond the classical education one would expect, or one would have expected in days gone by. There we go. That's a little better. Johannes boy. As well as a few of the steps I'm going to take, and am already taking in educating this boy and his sister. Yeah, his sister's asleep. And we're going to let her be. But what is this boy going to wind up getting? And the long and the short of it is, I'm not 100% sure. And the reason I'm not 100% sure is because this boy, in as much as possible, is going to be helping design his curriculum. Of course, there are going to be elements that we all think are important. Reading, writing, arithmetic, some basic science, basic social studies, understanding history. Basically, we're definitely going to get, have grammar school, would be grammar, logic, and rhetoric. This boy is going to be learning all the classics, and his sister is too. But we're not going to be sending them to public school. We're not going to be sending them to public school at all. Yes, Johannes boy. Daddy's not going to make you go to school. Daddy's not going to make you go to school at all. And I'll bet you, just looking at this boy, seeing at how much energy he has, what would you bet that especially in the U.S., but even in many other places, they wouldn't put him on Ritalin? What do you bet they wouldn't put him on Ritalin? I think that's an entirely reasonable assumption to make that they would. And I also think that it's entirely unreasonable to punish boys for being boys. course, this boy's going to require a different set of... He's going to require a different curriculum. He's going to require a different environment to some extent than his sister. And that's okay, because boys and girls are different. This boy clearly had a testosterone bath in the uterus. His brain got bathed in the testosterone and he became a big boy. And his sister is clearly behaving in a more feminine fashion. Now, of course, there's a spectrum of behaviors, but the fact of the matter is his mom and I, we want to ensure that he winds up getting what he needs. And so he's going to be learning over time how to channel his energy appropriately. But he's not going to be forced to sit down, shut up, and stop driving us crazy. I mean, certainly there's a time for sitting down and being quiet, but it's not going to be 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I mean, of course he'll gradually learn to do that if that's what his career goals or whatever entail, then he's going to himself learn to do that or fail. And the motivation to succeed at one's own goals is usually enough to get people to do all sorts of things that they wouldn't otherwise do. I know that there are people that have quit smoking because they wanted to. They just up and quit. And until they wanted to, they wouldn't do it. I know people that have gone and gotten an education because they wanted to, and they wouldn't be caught dead being compliant in school until such a point. And so our responsibility, that is his mother's and my responsibility as parents, is going to be to encourage this boy to pursue a myriad of interests and to take them to their logical conclusion. Whatever he happens to be interested in at the time is going to provide impetus for him to educate himself. And in educating himself in a specific domain, with, of course, the guidance and help of his mother and me, and us providing structure and us providing some incentives for discipline if there aren't any whatsoever, he is going to wind up learning all of the requisite skills, all of the different things that people would say that schooling should teach, just by virtue of it taking place in a real-world context. Which brings me to the next point, is he's not going to have action and consequence divorced from one another. Whatever he does, he is going to reap the rewards or the costs. He's going to reap both of them. Yeah, big boy. Daddy's not going to be shielding you. Mommy and Daddy aren't going to be shielding you from the consequences of your actions, but we're not going to let you do anything to kill yourself either. Yeah. We're not going to let you kill yourself. We love you too much for that. Now, Daddy's going to go and open up the YouTube thing, and we're going to look and see if anybody has gone and chatted. We're going to look and see if anybody has gone and looked at the chat and said anything. Daddy goes and opens this dashboard here. Daddy's going to go look at live streaming. And then we can even go and change the title of the stream so that it matches up with what it is that we're doing. Yes, we're not making fun of everyone and talking about how to get a significant other necessarily right now. We're just going to call this CSC episode 36, and then we can go and make our title later as we figure out what's going on. Yes, there we go, big boy. There we go, big boy. Anyhow, now we can go back to looking at our stream overlay. And we can go talking a bit more about actions and consequences. Yeah. You know how when your sister goes and does something like trying to climb up to a high place, Of course, Mommy and Daddy are going to watch her, but if she's not in too high of a place, she might fall down to the floor and get a little bit of a sting on her behind, or a sting on her head, or not head, but a sting on her hand, or a sting on her elbow, or a sting on her knee, or a sting on wherever she happens to fall. Mommy and Daddy aren't necessarily going to stop her from trying to climb into places, but she's going to learn, that if she tries to climb into bad places, she might take a fall. But of course, Mommy and Daddy are going to prevent her from doing anything dangerous. The same with you. Yeah, the same with you. Yeah. You see the reflection? Do you see that that's Johannes' boy? Do you see that's Daddy? So anyhow, yeah, this boy is going to reap what he sows. And because it's going to take place from a young age, he's going to learn to take responsibility for his own life. And that's going to be, from the word go. It's not like we're going to take a break at learning. I mean, he sits on the potty like a big boy, and he goes poo-poo in the potty, and while he's going potty, he gets to read his books. And his sister is even now starting to take the books and show him what's going on. And, she's taking part in being there for her little brother. We're inculcating family values from the beginning by just saying that, okay, this is how we do things in our house. And by doing things that way and just having the expectation set, that sets the stage for everything to be right later. Going and thinking that somehow you can't treat children like they're competent from a young age, and that you can't, talk about things honestly, is a big mistake. This whole idea that, yes, big boy, this whole idea that children can't know what's going on, I think no matter how gifted or normal or slow the children are, at least operating by that particular principle doesn't make any sense. Operating by that principle is unhealthy. Get that out of your mouth. That's the USB plug. You don't put that in your mouth. Yeah, you can wave it around and so on, but get that out of... You're not going to put that in your mouth. Yeah, there used to be other sorts of connectors with many pins. This is a USB connector, and it has all sorts of different contacts on the inside that go and relay electrical information from the keyboard in through the plug into the machine. Yeah. And the same with Daddy's USB mouse. There's Daddy's mouse, and there's the plug over there. And you see, we just keep on talking about these things and discussing how things work. In fact, there's this big book of how things work that it was Daddy's old book. And we're going to ask Grandma and Grandpa to send that here shortly. I think your sister would enjoy it. She loves looking at the pictures of how things work, and then there's a little bit of text there too that talks about it, and we can go and have a reading time. Don't put that in your mouth, Johannes. There are things that you can put in your mouth and things that you can't, and Daddy's keyboard wire is one of the things you can't. Uh-huh. Yeah. Exactly, big boy. You can go say hi to everyone who's watching the stream. Say hi. We love you. Big boy. There we are, big boy. Got to have our music-y time. Oh, yep. Here we are, big boy. Mm-hmm. Boy, do I wish that you started doing a little bit of English there, too, so the stream could know what you have to think about or what you're saying and so on. I know you have big thoughts you want to share, and they're probably, I don't know if they're related to the keyboard in front of you or the milk or coffee or whatever it is. I know your sister likes coffee, but you can't have any quite yet. You can't have any quite yet, big boy. Yes, exactly. And so because you're not going to wind up having cause and effect divorced from each other, big boy. Yeah. Because you're not going to be winding up having cause and effect divorced from each other. Mm-hmm. You're going to wind up being in a much better position. Hey! Hey, big boy! You're going to wind up being in a much better position to make good decisions than people that wind up shielding you from cause and effect from the very beginning. Indeed, Mommy and Daddy's generation are starting to realize that here for the past couple generations before us, the cause and effect thing have been severed. And I would not say that the motivation was necessarily bad, but I am saying that the generation that went through World War II got to see horrors in the West. People got to see the horrors of World War II, and they got the idea that they didn't want their children to see them. They got the idea they wanted things to be good for their children, and so I think that they may have gone a bit too far in the opposite direction. They might have gone a bit too far in shielding children from reality. And then, due to the nature of people and the nature of the government that they elect, the nature of the government that they ultimately, to some extent, do consent to having. Yeah, that's the curtains. Due to the nature of the government they consent to having, a whole bunch of redistributive policies were taking place. And these redistributive policies wound up divorcing cause from effect. Like, you can't fail to know that fire burns if you get burnt yourself. Yeah, I know. What a shame, little boy. I don't know what it is that you're seeing now, but yeah, you can just sit on Daddy's lap. You can sit on Daddy's lap. How's that? Yeah, that's Daddy's keyboard. Be not careful, 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 careful. Yes, I know you want to push on the keys like that, but you can't slam the keyboard. It'll go boom. It'll break. All the keys will go fly everywhere. And so you just don't divorce cause from effect unless it's going to be, really, really destructive or really, really bad or really, really painful. Then you can go and explain things. Like, for example, if once he gets to the point of being able to have a keyboard of his own, or what have you, if he breaks it, then that's on him. He's going to earn it. He's going to pay for it himself. And then he's going to value it. Yeah, exactly. You're going to value it. Yeah. And Daddy thinks that's an important part of life, that you learn ownership, that you learn stewardship, that you learn to take care of what is yours, and to appreciate what is yours for what is yours. And learn to keep your own property and help others preserve and protect what is theirs. So a lot of what it is that we're going to be doing in terms of education is going to be inculcating a particular system of values. Your sister's already going quite far, and you're already, you're doing quite a bit more now than you were before. But the value system that we wind up having here at home is incredibly important. And because everything that you wind up doing is predicated upon said value system, then that means, Johannes, that the rest of your life is going to be considerably, maybe not necessarily easier in the sense that doing the right thing isn't necessarily easy, but it's going to at least be The reasonably easy to come to the conclusions as to what the right decisions are, how to make them, and how to move forward in life. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, big boy. We all do. But you're going to learn from them and you're going to move forward. Your daddy wrote a piece yesterday, or rather your dad had in his drafts folder a piece that he finished up yesterday. And it was about homeschooling. Yeah. And the question is, here's a Quora question. My daddy answered, 18 hours ago. And it says, whoopsies, why are parents allowed to homeschool their kids? To teach in the public school system, teachers have to learn child development, show proficiency in their area, and be certified. But anyone can homeschool their kids. Oh yes, big boy. Oh, are we getting tired? Are we finally getting tired after a long night of not sleeping? Yeah. Daddy can put you to bed at some point, but Daddy's going to wait until you wind up starting to get heavy eyes. And then Daddy answered. Well, firstly, thank you, Robin L. Steers, for asking this question. The qualifications of teachers. And Daddy's notification thing. The qualifications of teachers and their role in society are excellent points to bring up. To all readers, if I may, please let me preface this answer by saying that my views on education are unconventional. They are based upon being homeschooled and graduating from university that my mother didn't even want me to attend, with degrees in chemistry and biology at the age of 16. If you aren't interested in approaching the subject with an open mind, and of seeing the issue from the perspective of someone who sees the current schooling paradigm as deeply flawed, then I suggest that you stop reading this answer now, and instead read some material from people who are enamored with the current German educational paradigm. They will quite likely be more to your taste. If, however, you are prepared to question basic assumptions about the nature of schooling and education, and are open to exploring possibilities not commonly discussed for over a century and a half, then I invite you to continue reading. So why are parents allowed to homeschool their kids? This touches a deep philosophical principle over which there has been much disagreement throughout history. One perspective states that there is some figure of authority, some expert or group in charge, that can state how my children may or may not be educated. The opinion or consensus of this expert or group supersedes my own. If I fail to educate my children accordingly, they can be forcibly removed from me. There are two motivations behind supporting such a position. One is benign and perhaps even honorable. The other, malignant and deplorable. The honorable motivation is that of wanting to ensure that children are taken care of properly and are provided an education that prepares them to meet the world and to find their way of becoming a small piece in the well-oiled machine of society. The deplorable motivation is that of wanting to be able to make decisions on behalf of others who have not consented thereto, of imposing one's will on the lives of others with the threat of violence in the form of CPS and police showing up at your doorstep to collect your children for truancy. Dennis Pratt articulates the opposite perspective in his answer. And he has an answer entitled, Dennis Pratt's Answer to Do You Consider Private Education Unethical? Then he has the header, Universal Human Ethics. And he says, so the universal human ethic here is that our daughter owns her own body. We as her parents have the responsibility to steward her, teaching her what she needs to take excellent care of herself. Hey, big boy. This doesn't mean that we make unilateral decisions for her. Had she been having a great time in the government school and preferred to stay, we would have followed her preferences. But she was slowly being ground down. We explained that she had no obligation whatsoever to submit to government schooling, and we offered homeschooling as an experiment over which she would have control. But note that this ethic also means that the government does not own our child. Too many parents accept that their stewardship ends when they pack their child over to the government kindergarten. But there is no one there who will protect your child like you will. Our sacrificing our child to their wallets or to their indoctrination goals is not protecting our child's body, which is our job as their stewards. End quote. So at least from what I can tell, the primary reason is that, at least in some cultural and geographic context, Johannes, you scrolled past the point where Daddy was. Daddy needs to scroll back up now. At least in some cultural and geographic contexts, enough people respect the second position that they refuse to force others to send their children to public schools. Nevertheless, in the United States at least, there is compulsory school attendance. This means that students are legally required to complete approximately 1,000 hours of schooling per year, or they can be considered truant. In other places, such as Finland, where I currently reside, there is compulsory learning. This means that as long as certain learning objectives are fulfilled, the state will be satisfied. Careful. Johannes. Look, big boy. You can't do that. That's Daddy's keyboard. That's Daddy's property. And you're going to respect it. As long as compulsory learning objectives are fulfilled, the state will be satisfied. Worldwide, if these statistics, and I have a footnote in my answer, and I'll actually reference the answer here for you guys in the description if you're interested in reading along. Daddy will copy the link, and then Daddy will paste it here in the chat. Hey, Johannes boy. Careful. Okay, that's the Quora answer. Daddy will paste it. And then we'll continue. So there's footnote 1. If these statistics mean anything, with notably few exceptions, governments want to have anywhere from a considerable say to a monopoly on the schooling process. Many people believe it is the role of government to engage in social engineering. Indeed, here in Finland, said social engineering is nearly ubiquitous and occurs from cradle to grave. It also makes many people feel better to have a government-approved, government-run, and centralized body issuing what essentially amounts to certificates of competence, or homogeneity. Now, with all that said, I'm going to let my own opinion be made abundantly clear. Firstly, I take issue with the question itself. The government cannot allow me to homeschool my children. They are my children. My wife and I are their stewards, not the state. It is our responsibility to ensure that they grow up ready to make decisions by themselves, and it is our right to homeschool them if we deem it best. No central planner, no matter how well-intentioned, knows our children better than we do, and I'd rather live in no man's land under a tree than give up my right to care for my children. The fact of the matter remains that, objectively speaking, you will find perhaps a handful of people in the entire world better qualified than my wife and me to raise and educate our children, and no one who is better equipped due to us knowing and loving them since before they were born. If anyone wishes to attempt to deprive my wife or me of my right to care for my children, he will have hell to pay. Gone will be my patience. Gone will be my tolerance. Gone will be any shred of goodwill. All that will remain is a burning desire to foil whoever has set out, conscientiously or not, to ruin the lives of my children. Of course, there is always the argument that homeschooling allows for the possibility of failure. This can be addressed by bringing up that these problems occur almost exclusively in abusive households which do not lend themselves to proper learning at all, whether the schooling is public or private. The same students that would flounder as homeschoolers would also likely flounder in public schools, and in both circumstances this is almost exclusively the fault of the parents. And I'm going to add a little addendum here. Yes, Johannes boy, is that there already exists the role of the Child Protective Services to intervene in the case of real abuse. And that, I think, would be a legitimate use of force to come to the actual defense of somebody. But no one's going to need to be defending you and your sister, because your daddy and your mommy, we love you. There's also the circumstance of someone who flounders in public schools, but immediately begins to flourish when given the opportunity to grow and develop away from the school environment. I'll leave it as an elementary exercise for you, dear readers, to find the copious statistics and thousands of anecdotes on the matter, sort through them for commonalities, and come to your own conclusions on the matter, as I think I've been unequivocally clear where I stand. Part 2. So to teach in the public school system, teachers have to learn child development, show proficiency in their area, and be certified, but anyone can homeschool their kids. To which I say, indeed. And for most of human history, education was nearly entirely done informally by parents in the community, and semi-formally through what would today be called internships, mentorships, apprenticeships, and so on. Yes, Johannes, that's the keyboard chord. On this particular subject, I could go on for many thousands of words, but for the sake of brevity, I'll limit myself to discussing 4 points that I hope will add to the discussion. 1. My own educational journey up to the present day. 2. Libraries versus schools. 3. Self-interest and the worth of education. Or 3B. Self-interest and the cost of education. 4. Cause and effect, trial and error. And 5. My proposal for a free market solution. My own educational journey up to the present day. Johannes, leave that alone. You know that it's going to hurt the keyboard if you're not careful. You can't do that. No. It's okay, you can be here in Daddy's lap. And Daddy can wind up giving you something else to play with if he can find it. But you're not going to be able to go for the keyboard right now. My own educational journey was anything but normal. From the time I was little, I was the proverbial square peg that wouldn't and couldn't fit into the round hole. While some of us are more square or more round than others, I believe that all of us are unique, and that we should each be able to decide on the nature of our education, and proceed in the way that is best for us as we determine it. I grew up in an environment where, among other things, I could read, write, debate, explore, and learn at will. I went to preschool as a 2-year-old, and after I came home from my first day, I wrote a thank you letter to the lady in charge. I brought it to her the next day with bright, shining eyes, and she lambasted me for writing in all capital letters. That evening, my parents decided to change their life's plans and live with only one income so that my mom could stay at home with me. We took adventures to the park, to the library, to museums, and to other places. I had the privilege of meeting many people that I otherwise wouldn't have met, and wrote to people that I knew I'd be quite unlikely to ever meet, but who I wanted to have as an influence in my life anyway. People were quite gracious with their time and resources, and just by being polite and inquisitive, People volunteered to send a lot of learning material that I would never have gotten my hands on had I not reached out, as well as to spend a lot of time just to play a role in the life of a little kid from central Ohio that they didn't even know. For example, I got to read training manuals for fighter pilots, pick the brain of a descendant of the Wright brothers, learn assembly, learn to play piano, learn to fly radio-controlled aircraft, and get really good at it. Work in the basement of a world champion builder and flyer of model airplanes, help and coach others in building and flying models, learn the fundamentals of aeronautical engineering, get hundreds of book recommendations from subject matter experts on various subjects, and read them all. The list goes on and on. Anyhow, from the time I was 6 years old to the time I was 10, I took gym, art, and music classes with my age peers at the local school, while homeschooling. And a translation of the homeschooling, doggedly pursuing my own interests and teaching what few age peers I had the stuff they needed to learn to advance well beyond their grade level. The rest of the time, when I was 8, I started taking some high school classes and immediately asked my parents if I could go to college. It took 2 years to get my mom on board with the idea of me going to college and 3 to actually get there. The funny thing is that ultimately, the reason it happened was completely out of my hands. The high school physics teacher refused to have me in his class. Children can't learn physics was his initial reason. But since I had already demonstrated knowledge of far more than the required math prerequisites and basically admitted that the reason I wanted to attend the class was for the labs as opposed to the lectures, he came up with the exceedingly pathetic reason that at the end of each year the class takes a field trip to an amusement park, and I was too short to ride the roller coasters. It's amazing how quickly my mom's tune changed when I asked again to go to college. I took the SAT and the ACT and got admitted to the 2 universities to which I applied and wound up going to the smaller one and getting it all paid for. One of the conditions my parents gave me for getting to go to college was that they refused to pay for it. Anyhow, at this point I was 11 years old and taking one college class, physics of course, and a more advanced course to boot, along with my usual homeschooling and unschooling thing, and gradually kept on adding classes that I thought were fun. I didn't even think about graduating, but by the time a few years had rolled around, I had tested out of or completed almost all the necessary coursework to get dual degrees in chemistry and biology, except for a few of the liberal arts and general education requirements, and some basic courses like Chemistry 1, Calculus 1 and 2, and so on. So I spent my last couple years at university dotting the I's and crossing the T's so that I could get a piece of paper that said I knew what I was talking about when it came to some subject matter. Hey, Johannes boy, you just wound up scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the answer. And even though Daddy wrote it, Daddy doesn't have it memorized. Daddy's going to scroll up. I dropped out of high school the day I graduated from college at age 16. Throughout the course of my time at university, I discovered that I had a different way of looking at the material than my classmates, and found myself gravitating toward tutoring all comers in all subjects, but with a definite emphasis in the STEM fields. I started teaching and I never quit. I will gladly go head-to-head with any school teacher, public or private, who thinks that she can teach children better than I can. Likely the only people that could even hope to successfully compete with the way I do things are already top teachers, and that's kind of the point. Being all read up on educational pedagogy and child development is largely irrelevant to ensuring that students receive developmentally appropriate education. And being certified as a teacher doesn't preclude one from being a mindless bean-counting pedagogue with no sense of perspective or knowledge even of the very basics of that which centuries ago would have been considered trivial, and still is, namely grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Part 2. Libraries versus schools. See, Johannes, there's a picture of the library. It's a picture of the library. We like libraries. Libraries are better than schools. Libraries are both repositories of knowledge And no one is there to crack a whip and make you fill reams of paper or a multiple choice test, mindlessly regurgitating the content of what you read by answering a list of back of the chapter questions with prescribed answers. Libraries allow you to explore any topic you want to any depth. You aren't limited by a 45 or 55 or 65-minute period, or by the pace your teacher or classmates are going. You can learn what you want, when you want, at the pace you want. You can construct your own knowledge web much more thoroughly than anyone else can. See, Johannes, there's a picture of a knowledge web. Of course, this is predicated upon the idea that we all need to take personal responsibility for our education. Of course, we, being the resourceful, intelligent human beings we are completely capable of so doing if put in a situation where that's simply required of us. Of course, it might require a paradigm shift for those of us who are used to school going like this. And then I took a slide from a Calvin and Hobbes comic strip that was turned into a GIF file, wherein Calvin's head was being filled with mush by a machine. Johannes, let go of that. You're not allowed to pull Daddy's keyboard down to the floor. There's one thing you just can't do when you're sitting in Daddy's lap. Yes, I know. Big boy, you're interested in that. But right now, big boy can't do that. Oh, standing up big and tall. Anyhow, Johannes boy, we have our next paragraph, and it has to do with self-interest. Aha. Big boy. Self-interest and the worth of education. This is quite a basic point. If you are interested in what's best for you, you will value education greatly. Indeed, I believe that you will value education far more than most children value going to school nowadays. You will have skin in the game. You will have an internal. Oh, Daddy's microphone. You will have an internal locus of motivation. Here, Johannes, you can hold on to Daddy's toothpaste tube. Yeah. You will have an internal locus of motivation. If your success hangs in the balance and is directly predicated upon how much you learn, as opposed to how well you perform, you will take learning a lot more seriously and do what is necessary to get the knowledge and skills necessary to get you through life. And by perform, I mean, of course, perform in school. Grades and so on. You're going to wind up achieving 100% mastery, dude. That's just a fact of life. You're going to wind up mastering what you need to master. But we're not going to go and just give you a sticker for doing something that you're already motivated to do. That'll deflate the value of it. Anyhow, next. Self-interest in the cost of education. Similarly, if you're interested in what's best for you, you will not want to pay for a worthless education. At bare minimum, you'll refuse to pay $11,000 a year for something you can get for yourself for free. You might also elect to hire a teacher, a tutor, a private school unhampered by state regulations, or whatever makes sense in order to improve your learning, or the learning of someone you care about. The catch here is that whoever you give your money to ultimately answers to you. This incentivizes all learning programs, teachers, coaches, etc. to provide you with what you need. Now we go to cause and effect, trial and error. School, in its present state, with its emphasis on grades and a standard curriculum, punishes students who fail to learn at a particular pace, and fails to reward students who exceed the pace of the herd. Insofar as failure and success are concerned, the punishments for failure are disproportionately severe, while the rewards for success are disproportionately minuscule. When learning to ride a bicycle, you don't get a red X and an F on a page as a reminder every time you fall. And you don't get a green check mark and a 100% with a googly-eyed smiley face with the zeros as eyes when you finally make it down the hill all by yourself. Falling is enough of a teacher. You don't need to have someone calling attention to it every time it happens. Refer to footnote 3. You know. You can get back up and try again. Belaboring the point is only going to make you less likely to try. All that matters is that eventually you get to the point of writing. Then, upon already being a success and knowing it, if you then get a 100% smiley face and a sticker, that's just an insult. You can ride a freaking bicycle, whoop-de-doo. It's enough of a reward in and of itself. Similarly, being beaten down because you didn't learn math in the way it was taught in class by a pedagogue that likely doesn't even understand such basics as number theory won't help you ultimately learn it. Once you've gotten it, though, no amounts of smiley face stickers or googly-eyed 100% will ever replace the satisfaction of knowing something, the significance of which you fully grasp, and that will help you for the rest of your life. So Daddy has a proposal for a free market solution for education. Daddy's proposal is very simple. It would be achieved in a 3-step process. A 3-step process, Johannes boy. Yes, I know you're being impatient, and I know you're very tired. But we're going to get through this article. You get to listen to Daddy read, and you get to read it yourself, too, if you want to. It's right up here. 1. Introduce education vouchers with minimal oversight. This way, money can go equally toward those who wish to unschool, homeschool, or send their children to private school, and those who wish to send their children to the exact same schools to which they were going before. Teachers' unions will pitch a fit, but that's okay. They exist solely to allow poor teachers and teachers' union administrators to have a free lunch without providing anything of value to anyone. When their free lunch is When their free lunch is taken away, of course they're going to whine. We'll deal with their whining for a little while, but that too shall pass. Oh, big boy. Daddy knows you're tired. Is Daddy going to put you back in bed? Oh, are you able to sleep now? Is that a tired cry or is that a frustrated cry? Daddy has a little bit of trouble distinguishing the cries that Mommy knows about.